You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to episode 180 of Flipping the Birds. My name is Brian Cameron, alongside Zach Chavalella, Morgan Burkett, Eric Reese, and we're live at 8:30 in the morning on Saturday. How you guys feeling today?
We gotta put on like little morning sexy voices. Welcome.
I thought that was my morning sexy voice.
That was good. That's why I think that
cool.
kind of triggered mine, but I gotta lower my tone.
I think we're all good. I think Eric looks comfy cozy, if I may say so, and we're ready to talk some birds.
Here, I put a hat on for this.
It kind of makes me wonder, like, how many morning shows I've listened to, not knowing the dude's just in bed. Like,
for sure.
This is behind the scenes, guys.
I mean, it's 2023. Let's think about how many Zoom calls people are on during the workday, and people just aren't wearing pants. Now we're talking about flipping the birds inside of bed. That's that's the world we live in.
We're getting creative.
Birds in bed.
We're really getting creative here.
If we make the morning show a permanent fixture, flipping the birds in bed is definitely the title. I think.
I feel like that's just gonna
flipping the bed. Oh.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, back to your Zoom call take earlier. I'm definitely wearing pants, so
I don't know. Davey thinks otherwise. He definitely said you're naked under that blanket.
I heard Derek's actually wearing a couple pairs of pants. He switches it up. he stands up. So.
I'm definitely a pantsman. So Davey, I'm sorry, dude, but there's pants on. There's pants on this bird.
We did talk about in our group kind of raising the sex appeal of the birds. That's what's selling these days. So I do appreciate Eric, taking that to heart. And
I better calm down, dude.
Yeah. That's what next week he's gonna have holes cut in the nipples. It'll be great. Tune in for that.
And then come the clamps.
Yeah.
Oh God. Well, outside of the flipping the bed, Flipping the Birds is here to discuss the Eagles versus Commanders tomorrow. Divisional matchup, 1 p.m. And I mean, we didn't get to have a Tuesday episode to talk about the Eagles and Bucks, but just to kind of piggyback off of that, like how impressed were you guys with what they put out on the field on Monday night? I feel like DeAndre Swift is everything advertised and more. The Eagles offense seems to be kind of clicking, but it's the Eagles defense, I think, that's really impressing everybody right now.
Yeah, I was very impressed by the way that Desai kind of had a game plan ready for the Eagles to counter. I mean, Baker Mayfield threw his first pick to Blankenship, so that was nice to see. You kind of were the first ones to get in his way throughout the entire season. I think, the defense was great. The rushing attack was about what I thought, because I felt the Eagles were going to grind down the Buccaneers. I don't think Hurts struggled as much. Like, I think this is his best game, even though he threw 2 interceptions. Because I look at the competition on the other end, and I'm like, the Bucs have one of the better defenses in the league. So yeah, and one of those interceptions, by the way, was like in the corner of the end zone. He just happened to get 2 feet in bounds. Like, it wasn't like it was a bad throw. It was more of a better play by the defense. This is a game where, like, on paper, you're just like, oh, he threw 2 interceptions. He struggled. I think he struggled less against the Buccaneers than he did, say, not really having the best of games in the first 2 weeks. And, yeah, statistically on paper it doesn't say so, but with the eye test, I think he's kind of putting it together. Like, week 4 against the Commanders, I think, well, we'll get into this today, but I think the Eagles are going to blow them out of the water.
Yeah, I want to preface as far as Monday night's game. This first, I did not watch the game. I had friends from Nashville up playing a show with the Fillmore. Shout out Wilby. But from what I did, I watched the first half, recorded after. What I saw through everything, knowing that apparently there's been an illness that was making its way through the Eagles as a team, but affecting Jalen Hurts as well. I definitely agree with Eric that this was Hurts' best game. Was it the best game that we've ever seen him play? Absolutely not. But against, as you mentioned, a difficult, and they didn't have all their, the defensive starters, but a difficult Tampa Bay defense on the road, not exactly feeling 100%, to pull off the game throwing for 277, like Jalen Hurts did. I definitely an impressive outing, and against a less impressive Commanders team, I definitely think that there's a lot of hope to be had for tomorrow afternoon. And just speaking of the whole team in its entirety, real quick, to have that kind of bug moving through the locker room and to still have such a dominant win against a 2-0 team. I get it. It's the Bucs still against a 2-0 team. It's an impressive win overall. So I'm feeling pretty good, especially, I don't know what makes me feel better, how the Eagles performed heading into this Sunday or how the Commanders performed last week. But all around feeling pretty good early on.
Yeah. I think overall an impressive win. I think realistically, some stuff to clean up. If Mike Evans doesn't drop a few balls he usually catches, that defense might look like the defensive stats might look a little different. So I think there's still something. I think the secondary, that's what the main thing is. Like, I love Reed Blankenship. He's coming along, right? Still a young guy, right? It's still developing secondary, and they're still figuring it out. So I think that that's kind of where I see the most room for growth. I think obviously the D line's flying around. The linebackers as well. I think that something I've been impressed by is just the coverage of the two vets in the middle. You don't really necessarily expect that. Like, I think, obviously as veterans, they're going to understand their roles, but kind of tagged as more kind of downhill run guys. But they've been pretty good in coverage. Like, what I really like is you start to see Sean Desai getting a little more creative. We saw some of that 5-1 look, and I mean, like, Hassan Reddick, at one point they lined up five linemen across the board, and it was Hassan Reddick behind him. And man, like the looks you can get out of that, and like if we're already getting that going in week 3, man, like the type of things we're going to see on this defense going forward is going to be ridiculous. It's going to be a whole bunch of fun to watch. So like even with like the game plan, like it's just like kind of a miraculous opportunity had to just like to see how good this defense could be, because they're doing all this. Sure, Mike Evans dropped a couple balls, it is the Bucs, but like it was just dominant. They could kind of do whatever they wanted to, and that's not always a good place to be in. But I just think this Eagles defense is so humble. Like they don't care who gets the sack. They don't care who gets the stat. They're coming off a Super Bowl appearance. They're humble, right? So like, it's nice to be able to do whatever you want and still have humility, right? Like, because it can go to your head, and I think that's kind of what happened last year. Talking about kind of flowing into the Commanders game, like I think that's kind of what happened last year. And I just like I was watching the interviews last night, kind of rewatching them, and it just doesn't seem to be the same vibe. There's no cockiness. There's nothing like that. They're having a good time. On offense, man, like it's tough to be a first-year coordinator in the NFL having, a lot of the same looks you did last year. Like the defenses adjust like that, right? Flip of a hat, NFL defenses are going to adjust, right? So Brian Johnson's still figuring it out. The biggest concern, obviously, which we'll talk about for Washington, is the red zone, right? Like they need to figure out a way to score in the red zone, but they're driving the field, man. Like don't get me wrong. Like there's stuff to sort out, but they've never had an issue getting down the field, right? And that's one of those things, like when you get to the playoffs, you're not always going to score touchdowns every single drive, right? But you have to be able to drive the field. You have to be able to score points. You have to be able to come away with positive possessions. And the Eagles have been able to do that. The fact that we haven't even seen their best ball, not even close, in my opinion, and they're 3-0. I mean, what more can you ask for?
I think what's really impressing me right now is the next man up mentality right now with the defense, right? Like you have Nicholas Morrow coming in, and he's graded to be one of the best linebackers in the league right now by PFF. Then you have Josh Jobe, who only allowed about 24 to 40 yards, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And it didn't even look like he had a good game.
Exactly. And then that's the mind-blowing part. I think that's what I love about Sean Desai so far is the humility, like you said. Like nobody is expected to be perfect, but as long as everybody's doing their job, then they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. Jalen Carter is just a man I can't even describe it. He's a manimal in the middle. Jordan Davis is coming into his own, right? And you see that they're chipping Hassan Reddick, they're chipping Brandon Graham, they're double teaming these guys, but they're leaving the middle wide open for these young guys to just feast. But I'm really impressed of what I've seen so far from the defense. Offensively, it's like what you said. They're driving down the field. They're doing what they have to do to get to the red zone. The main concern is actually finishing the job, which you want to involve a Dallas Goedert. You want to involve Devontae in the slot or AJ in the slot to make these scores happen.
There's the one play on that note. There's the one play where both Fletcher Cox and Jalen Carter got a double team, and they both beat their double teams. Like people talk, like announcers go crazy when you see a 3-man rush and they get to the quarterback. They're like, wow, this should never happen. Like it's amazing. They just went 4 against 2 and we won. Like we're winning, and that's technically your backup defensive tackle. Like it's just silly stuff on the defensive line. Just silly.
And even Zach's boy, Marlon. I can never say the last name.
Tuipulotu, baby. I know. I've been waiting. I was waiting.
Yes, sir.
Trying to be patient, but can we get a hell yeah from Marlon Tuipulotu? I did not watch the whole game, but you bet your ass I did watch that play again and again and again. Absolutely excited to see his first sack, first of many. It's Tuipulotu season, baby.
And the rotation is phenomenal. And Tuipulotu's brother, is he the one on the Chargers, or is that just a coincidence? Okay.
I think so too. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. These guys are, again, the rotation. Everybody's firing off. Milton Williams, Fletcher Cox, like everybody's accepting a role under a first-year defensive coordinator, and you don't hear any backlash about it. And I think that's phenomenal. That speaks volumes as to what the culture of this team is right now.
Yeah, the culture of this team is, I feel like it's pretty much the same that you saw before. It's just go out there, get the job done. The next man up mentality, even if it doesn't even matter along the side of injury either, because you see next man up. What Zacchaeus got into the game against the Bucks. This almost a defense again. Talking about them so much, this offense is starting to spread itself out a little bit. That was one of the other good signs, especially through the air, that I saw from Jalen Hurts. It gets a better defense. I think the best defense we faced all year.
It was a pretty well spread ball Monday night. Obviously, AJ Brown dominated a lot of the receiving game. That's just because he was popping off that night. But Zacchaeus definitely getting his. Smith didn't have the most yards that he's ever seen, obviously, but 4 receptions. That's not bad considering, just how well the ball was spread overall. But when you kind of look at everything in its total, even Dallas Goedert, they got involved in the game with 5 receptions. Like, that's spreading the ball. Like, that's what they're looking to do. And Zacchaeus, what's been really interesting is dude averaged 29 yards a catch. I'm just saying, like, Kes Watkins, who, like, there's been, it's not the exact same role, but like Zacchaeus really like has taken advantage of this opportunity. And so what I think most excited for is that going forward, when we talk about that third receiver spot, is Kes Watkins is going to have to be hungry to get that role back. And I think the talent's there for Kes. So I with this new motivation of this is not a secured spot, I think as a speed talent, at least Eric, it's there. I want to see a battle.
Yeah, I want to see a battle too.
I want to see a mid-season battle for that.
Zacchaeus looks
wide receiver reps.
Extremely shifty on his routes, like way more committed than I feel like Quez looks on his routes.
Yeah. Yeah,
who looks a lot
he
more
just has
committed?
far more agility overall than Kes Watkins has.
Who looks a lot more committed on his routes?
Stop it.
You want to know who he does?
It's too early, dude.
It's not.
But yes, he does. He does look a lot more committed on his routes. You're right. Greg Ward does look more committed on his routes.
You're dang right he does. I want to see a battle, Zach.
Yes.
That's the battle that I'm watching. That's the battle.
This guy, bro.
Anyway.
So speaking of battles, right? Let's talk about tomorrow's battle. Divisional matchup. The Eagles' first divisional matchup of the season. It is against the Commanders, Sam Howell, Terry McLaurin, and Eric Bieniemy, right? The new how can I say this? The new empire of the Commanders, where you have Josh Harris is the owner now, right?
Let's not focus on that part. Sixers reporter in me would rather us not focus on that detail.
I mean, we had to kind of bring that up. I mean, he owns
for
the
sure.
Devils,
And it's
Sixers, and Commanders.
Yeah, I know. So he'll buy the Mets, Brian. So you can look forward to that next.
No.
When Cohen's ready to sell. But
No.
I will say this: Harris has been, and you kind of have to be. I feel like in football, and I think it might be the most exciting team to own of the five major sports in the U.S. But Harris has really leaned into that ownership role. He's been everywhere. You know, if there's a photo op in Washington to be had, he's been there, and it is legitimate passion about the excitement around the team. You know, the dedication to improving the. I don't know if you guys have been to the Commander Stadium. I had box seats there once, and it was worse than just
it's
sitting
not
upper level in the link. Like it was rough. So there's a lot that can be improved around there. So it looks like Harris is looking to do that, but he's really, you know, I feel inspired, at least most of the guys in Washington as well, with this kind of ownership passion. So it has made a difference. It is unfortunate. I would say that there are so many conflicting ties, at least as far as it relates to the Philadelphia 76ers. But as far as it pertains to this Sunday, it's just a kind of energy level you have to keep in check, kind of punch them in the mouth early so that they can't rally against you.
Yeah, he's shaking everybody's hand, you know, like Joe Buck and things like
He's
that.
trying.
You know,
He's trying.
He's going for every hand. He wants to be known. He's disregarded the Sixers completely, which is gnarly. But you know, hey, as long as the Commanders don't have like zip ties holding up the guardrails, you know, then I guess I'll base how good of a owner he is based on like that fact alone.
I will say real quick, which scenario would you rather deal with on a daily basis? Would you rather deal with owning a football team, or would you rather deal with the James Harden situation on a daily basis?
Owning a football team.
I think the easier
I don't
one to deal with.
Blame him.
Oh wait! Does this mean like also picking the easier one to deal with? Because I think the easier one to deal with is James Harden. Because I would just tell him to leave. That's it. It's over.
It doesn't work like that.
I'm gonna bite my tongue on that one.
Like at this point, I mean, listen. I'm gonna stick to hockey after all this at the end of the day. But it's just, dude, if you don't want to play for the Sixers, then stick. That was an easy decision. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just
to be continued.
This is not a Sixers podcast. But what I will say is, you know, it's definitely weird seeing him pick up all these ownerships, you know, as far as like teams that are direct rivals, almost specifically to Philadelphia sports. But yeah, I mean, great. Like, you know, if you're a Sixers fan, you know, maybe shake his hand when he offers you a handshake. But also tomorrow at 1:00, you know, sorry that you're owning the Redskins, the Commanders. Pick one. You had 3 names in 2 seasons in Washington. All right, pick one.
They're picking a 4th from what I heard.
No,
they're still going to be looking at
even worse. Now I got to try it again.
So for the matchup, what are your keys to watch for the Eagles?
I think they're just going to steamroll. Like I really don't see any sort of like thing to watch as far as like the Commanders. Like I guess like, you know, play the deep pass because obviously McLaurin is an issue like all the time. But I think, you know, as soon as you get pressure on How's the easiest quarterback matchup that the Eagles will have in the first 4 weeks?
I don't know. I mean, he's a bit of a risk taker, if you ask me. Like the guy's slinging it without care. He's
kind of got to be a risk taker to get some reward out there because I just don't see him being consistent. Yeah, I still really believe that if you play this game almost exactly like you did against the Bucks, you'll be fine. Like it's really how I look at this. But, you know,
yeah, I mean,
then again, that's easier said than done. I'm pretty sure, you know, with the tape and all the game planning, that's exactly not going to be what the procedure calls for.
I mean, Howell is definitely a risk taker. I think we saw that last week against Buffalo to the tune of 4 interceptions. So for me, the key of the game is generating that pressure early. up front. So the more frequently that you can get to Howell, throw him off his timing, throw him off his footing. And then at that point, you're just giving up easy balls to the secondary who can hopefully come down. I know Darius Slay is going to do what he can to come down with at least one ball. But that's the name of the game. It's just generating pressure. So offensively, I think that we're still sticking to the run. I think that's still the primary course of action, do it until it doesn't work. And so whether that's spot plays for Jalen Hurts, obviously running through DeAndre Swift. I do wish that they would peel back on it a little bit, only in the hope of preserving DeAndre Swift for later in the season, because that's my one concern.
My fantasy team says no.
But maybe this week, Eric, while we're playing each other, maybe they pull back DeAndre Swift a little bit. Just this 1 week. Maybe make him a healthy scratch.
You'll see why Zach wants DeAndre Swift to be pulled back a little bit, right? Okay.
Yeah, but I'm saying, listen, he can go off for 3 touchdowns for all I care, but let's just not run the guy into the ground, because
he can go off for 3 touchdowns.
Out of it, he can. He has the potential, but the way that he's played is obviously that's a special player. He's the first guy to put up numbers like this since LaShawn McCoy in the Eagles uniform, at least, and so that's the kind of guy you want to make sure he's healthy later on in the year. So, mix up the run a little bit, go a little more committee style, because I'm not overly concerned about what the Commanders can do against this Eagles.
Throw a shot Penny in there a little bit. I mean,
yes, absolutely, yeah. Try and get him rolling a little bit. You have Kenny Gainwell, who is very reliable. Throw a shot Penny in there, and then have plays for DeAndre Swift. Keep him. Keep him moving, keep him fresh. Thank you. But, you don't have to run him into the ground against the Commanders, especially how they've looked this season.
I do agree. And as a Swift owner, as far as fantasy is concerned, I would absolutely still like to see Penny get some meaningful touches against a team that I think you should kind of reach into your depth a little bit more to see what they actually do have to offer. Because we know that Swift is going to be the hot hand, if you will, if you're Sirianni. I think the go-to guy in Philadelphia as far as just starting, from top to bottom on that depth chart. But at the same time, we know what Swift has. He can break it for 150 yards almost without breaking a sweat. But we don't know, even still going into week 4, what exactly Penny's role or what he is with Philadelphia.
How you feeling about Morgan?
Yeah, I feel good. I think I agree with Zach and Eric. I'd like to see the rotation kind of going. We saw a bit of it last game. I mean, point blank, running behind this O-line, it doesn't really matter. Obviously, Swift offers a lot after first contact, and so does Gainwell. Obviously, the kind of the top end, Swift offers you a little bit more, but these running backs are getting 6 yards before they even get touched, right? So it's a blessing as a running back. The rotation really could be the practice squad guys, as long as they hold onto the rock. It's just incredible what this offensive line is doing. So why not get the rotation going? Because I think what you talked about, I think there's a couple podcasts ago, Brian, it's just you're going to need all these guys for the playoff run. So let's get them activated early. Let's get that rotation going. Let's see what they look like. Because what you really don't want to do is lose one of those guys mentally, right? Rashad Penny, he's used to kind of, no offense to him, and I don't mean any slight of it, but he's a guy that starts off the season hot and then unfortunately due to injuries kind of fizzles out. So he's used to kind of starting the season with a lot of carries, right? So you don't want to lose him mentally. You're going to need him. Penny Gainwell, is nice to see him get action, even just coming off the injury, because I think the same thing, right? You want to keep the wheels turning. But realistically, whatever the rotation looks like, as good as the Washington defensive line can be and has shown glimpses of over the first 3 weeks, it's just this O-line is playing out of their minds right now. So that is just going to be a tough matchup for Washington. And that's just the point of attack for the Eagles, regardless of whether they're running or passing. They're just going to dominate up front. We saw the Bills, just aren't the same rushing team. Obviously James Cook has been pretty impressive, but still almost put up 100 yards, right? So, it's just going to be dominant on the offensive line. What I would really like to see is what we kind of talked about is it's great to drive the field. Like I would love to see this red zone offense get going. I think this is kind of a great week. I really hope Washington makes Philly drive the field just so they can figure out that red zone offense. Because if they can get that going this week and kind of work out some of those kinks, obviously you don't want to show everything in week 4, but you have to find a way to score consistently. On the defensive side of the ball, the Washington O-line is really holding them back. Sam Howell, man, he's a pretty good prospect, actually. He's one of my favorites coming out of that draft. I think he's got a lot of talent to offer. I think, I wouldn't be surprised if he sticks around in Washington for a bit. They've kind of been fine with having more of a journeyman quarterback that's willing to, make his plays when he can. And, he's still young. He's still learning. He's going to make mistakes. He's trying to make plays. But it's really hard to make plays behind that O-line. Denver's not that good on defense as much as they should be and have been in the past, and they were still able to get home. The Bills defense was able to get home. Everyone just kind of walking through that O-line. So, the defensive line is just going to have a field day. We could be looking at Eric's talking about domination. Regardless of what the score is, we could be looking at a 7-8 sack kind of game. Same that happened in the first game last year, right? It's just going to be domination up front. So whether or not Washington can figure that out, I think that, when you lose a game the way that they lost 37-3, I think this coaching staff is too good to let that happen twice in a row, to be honest. I really do think that they'll bounce back. I don't expect this to be a gimme. I don't expect this to be a show up and win, but realistically, they just don't have the talent to compete. So I think, there might be times where, it's a bit frustrating. The Eagles aren't moving the ball. Washington seems like they're hanging around, but I think kind of eventually they pull away. But I don't know if it's going to be a full blowout. It's still a division game, right? They're still going to play hard. I think that Washington, they're a 2-1 team realistically. They got blown against the Bills, but they're still 2-1. And right now, probably think in that locker room they got a chance at the division if they can win some of these games. So I expect them to come out, flying. And I just think at the end of the day, the Eagles are too talented. So as long as they treat it and they don't get in their own heads like last year and kind of have those mistakes, should be a fairly easy win.
Go ahead.
I was going to say just about the Russian game, just to kind of add on to what we were talking about with Swift and Penny. It's going to be a lot of brotherly shoving too. And I'm stoked, when you get into the red zone and maybe on the goal line, obviously on the goal line, and just to see the reaction of everybody's fan base about how the Eagles are doing something so illegal that's been legal for 18 years.
It's very Philly. They talk about Sean Desai talking about having a defense that kind of represents the city. Again, I'm not from the city, but from what I know about Philly, having a play that works every single time that pisses everyone else off is a very Philly thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's it's awesome to have that because I think JJ Watt that put out the tweet is you can ban it. It's not the push that gets them the touchdown. It's that O-line. You look at okay, maybe sometimes Goddard's pushing him into the end zone, but really the O-line's 3 yards downfield when they only needed 1 yard. So stop that first, guys. Stop complaining.
I completely agree with that.
I just want to add to that real quick. I saw on Twitter there was somebody who proposed the question in the video that was if it got you 5 or 6 yards each time, do you think the NFL would make it illegal? I'm like, no, I think that we would just run in 100% of the game. 5 or 6 yards each time. What are we talking about here?
To dial it back to the running back by committee, right? So I know we talk about keeping DeAndre Swift fresh, getting Gainwell more action, and getting Penny involved. I do think they did miss Scott, which is weird to say against the Bucs, just because he's been so elusive behind Swift. But Gainwell, I feel like he hasn't been as impressive as they want him to be. 14 carries in each of his first 2 games, and against the Bucs, 43 yards, 3 yards per carry. Against the Patriots, 54 yards, 3.8 yards per carry. So it's kind of do you feel at this point they need to involve a Rashad Penny more and possibly involve Boston Scott more than they're involving Gainwell?
If Boston
14 carries is a lot.
Yeah, if Boston Scott can't get into the game, then I think that's where the real involvement you talk about with Penny, because I do think it's going to be the first 2 backs who are going to get most of the load are obviously going to be Swift and Gainwell. So yeah, I think that's when you start talking about like how much you're using Penny. I know Scott was on the injury report at one point. I think he might be
Yeah, he
healthy
was
now.
concussion protocol, but he
Okay.
should be good now.
So again, like we were talking about maybe this is a week where Penny gets more action. Maybe not. Maybe this is a week where actually him coming off a protocol, maybe he does still get more action than Scott. But either way, like I see, it's still a very limited role for either one. Even if Scott didn't have the concussion protocol, you're so far down the depth chart there that you would literally have to have a lead so big into going into the second half where you're basically just playing run out the clock and prevent.
Yeah, but against Minnesota, Scott had 5 carries for 40 yards. That's already. I mean, you think about Gainwell's 14 carries for 43. You're kind of like, okay, like who's my more efficient back right now? And I feel like instead of riding the hot hand, or instead of riding their preference, I feel like they need to involve everybody for their abilities. Like you want Penny and Swift in minimal gain, right? You want possibly Gainwell in there as well, but I feel like you have to involve the guys who are being as efficient as possible. And it's not a slide towards Gainwell. I just feel like they put too much behind Gainwell this season for him to possibly fail because of it.
Yeah, I mean, he was your starting running back for all intents and purposes, week one, because obviously we were talking about how Swift didn't really get involved, and as far as rushing the ball in the first game, and then obviously it's been the Swift show the last 2 games for the most part. Yeah, I mean, looking at this rushing attack, I just don't. I think the room's too crowded. I think we can be saying this about whoever the third guy is literally every week. Maybe maybe Gainwell doesn't average more yards per carry than but they have the same amount of yards and even more carries than Scott. Like Scott, you said, had about 50 yards or whatever on 5 carries. Like that's very efficient, but also the end game there is he's out of the lineup. He's injured. Is he going to be the same Boston Scott that he was in that game where he was running efficiently as he returns into the lineup? And then in the meantime, while he's been away, was Penny efficient? Like that's the question. Like and then you kind of and to me, Penny really wasn't that efficient. He didn't open up my eyes, but at the same time, he had a
Well,
chance
Penny
to
hasn't
show
seen
his
the
work.
field at all. That's the only
I,
issue.
I, I thought I thought he did see the field a few times. They got a few carries, and it was mostly 1 to 2 yards.
I don't think he's seen the field. I mean, if anyone wants to correct me.
Against the Vikings, he had 3 carries, I believe.
Yeah,
Okay.
like not much. There's really nothing to
Yeah.
write home about. If you missed it,
Yeah.
you missed it. But it's just
3
like
3 for
carries
9
and a
yards.
reception. Yeah.
yeah, it's mostly even when he had the opportunity to kind of take what Scott would have as far as a load, it's still been the Swift and Gainwell show.
Yeah, I think like kind of on the outside looking in too, like we kind of assume it's more of a conscious decision than it is. I think like obviously you want to ride the hot hand, obviously you want to have the guys in there, but like for example, like Swift dials out a 27-yard run and needs a breather, like you put in Kenny, like what I mean. Like I just think that like again, kind of like what I was talking, like the O-line's so good, like it doesn't matter who's out there, right? So like if Swift is in there, he's turning out yards. You leave him in, and then all of a sudden he needs a little bit of breather. Like it's kind of I think of it as the same way you look at AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, right? Like they're gonna have games. Like it's not about AJ Brown's our number 1 receiver and Devontae Smith's our number 2 receiver, or vice versa. Like it's more about the opportunities are given, and if you take advantage of them, fantastic. And sometimes like your skill set is gonna frighten the defense a little more. Like Washington is 100% preparing for Swift, right? And they're looking at how he runs, and they're looking at all this, and then all of a sudden it's Gainwell, all of a sudden it's Penny. Like it just gives a different look. It's just hard. It's just you can't game plan for that. So like regardless of what it is, obviously like you'd be hard pressed as a coach right now to not think that DeAndre Swift is your number 1 option just by the way he's running the football, right? Like I don't think you take opportunities away from him, but again, like kind of like you guys were both alluding to earlier, like you need him for the whole season. So he pops out 100 yards in the first half, which honestly against this defense might be doable. Also, like I was talking about the O-line before, I did not realize the Bills had 9 sacks last game. Like it's just, anyways, we can get back to that.
Yeah.
9 sacks.
I just don't think
9
think
sacks,
it's
4 picks.
It was fun.
Damn.
It was fun, dude.
A route.
Eric said it was fun, like he was right there.
Yeah. He was playing on that D line actually. That's
I'm
why
gonna
he's
watch.
still-
It was
Even Eric
so
got a
fun.
sack.
It was. I got a sack, dude. It was so fun. I'm gonna watch my highlight.
Yeah, so many sacks that Eric got one just by watching. That's
The
great.
ultimate fan experience. They're just putting fans on the field.
They
to
put
sack
him.
the
They put him
Commanders.
in. But yeah, man. Like, all I'm saying is, like, I don't think that the coaching staff's going in and be like, okay, like, Swift is gonna get 22 carries, then Gainwell's gonna get 8, and like this is how it's gonna go. Like, I think it's
They're just riding the wave, pretty much.
It's just fluid, right? So like I don't think it's like, oh, like we're not playing Gainwell as much because he's not as good. We're not playing Penny as much because he's not as good. It's like, hey, listen, we're getting a lot of yards right now with 2 guys, and Rashad Penny, like shit, like if you can keep him healthy and then all of a sudden he's coming in fully rested, or like maybe, ideally he has more than he has now, but you want to hit a fully rested Rashad Penny in December, like that sucks. That's gonna suck, right? Like, and so I think that like over the long term, like I hope that communication is happening in the locker room. I'm sure it is. This coaching staff is very capable, but I think that that's kind of the plan. Is you keep a guy like that healthy for December. Look out, league. Like you have to tackle DeAndre Swift, and then you have to tackle Rashad Penny, and then Gainwell to switch it up. Like that just sucks.
I have a curveball to throw, and then the only reason I'm bringing this up is I saw in the article with with the way DeAndre Swift is playing. Do you, if you're Howie Roseman, do you extend him for a kind of a hometown discount early on to keep him for the next couple of years, or do you just kind of be like, hey, like, because you think about it, right? Jason Kelsey's retiring this year, right? Lane Johnson is not that far away from retiring. Like you're gonna have a different looking offensive line going forward. Do you take advantage of what you have right now and keep it for the next 2 years on a a hometown discount, or do you just kind of like go into next season, get a new guy, and call it a day?
Do you get a hometown discount on a running back? Is that even a
Well,
thing? Like, I mean,
so
they're,
my
they're
thing is-
fighting for their financial lives right now. I just
Right,
don't
Correct,
think
but-
they're going to be able to get a discount.
DeAndre Swift to me would be a hometown discount because he is technically where he wants to be. He is home. He's from
Sure.
Philly. He wants to be there, right? And I feel like you look at it kind of like an Alshon Jeffrey thing where you extend them in the middle of the season because he's doing so well and don't allow him to test the market. Because they were comparing the Jahmyr Gibbs contract to what it could be like a ceiling for running backs right now.
Yeah, it is something that I am sure Howie will consider, just because he considers just about anything. I mean, optionality has always been the discussion with Howie. When you talk about Swift being where he wants to be and playing for his hometown team, I mean, that's stuff that's going to be true in the offseason as well. The one thing you want to avoid is the bidding war. So do you go ahead and lock in now? I think right now might be a little premature because you're just coming off of 2 extremely hot games. You don't know that that's going to happen as the season goes on. And then the other major concern is the injury history of Swift. So if you were to, the tough part of it is, like, if you were to lock him into like a team friendly deal where you're talking about like a 2-year extension, something like that, then I would say obviously it's something to consider. But
Right.
Swift's agent, if he has his client's best interest at heart, they're going to be going for years. They're going to be going for as much guaranteed money over as many years as possible for Swift's next contract. So I just don't know that there's an agreement to be had, but I'm absolutely interested in the idea of bringing Swift back. It's just, what's the best way to navigate that situation? You have to find out.
Yeah. I think it's really entirely up to Swift, to be honest. Like I just don't see Howie being the guy to reset the market at running back. It just doesn't seem like a Howie thing to do. I think it'll be more about how much Swift wants to stay in the city. Now, if I'm a running back and I'm looking at what's out there, the Eagles are by far the best option. So I don't think, like, regardless if it's Swift, if it's another free agent, like I think they're going to have a lot of suitors. Like I don't think that's going to be an issue. And then behind this offensive line, I get what you said, Brian. Like they are getting older and all that stuff. It's still Jeff Stetland University, right? Like you're still going to have a good offensive line. I can't see with Jeff Stetland here you ever having a bad offensive line. It's still a priority. He'll, like how he will reset the market in the line, like defensive line, offensive line. And then obviously he knows how important a number 1 receiver is for a quarterback. So I think that's why you see the AJ Brown contract, but I just can't see him resetting the market at running back. So I think it's entirely going to be up to DeAndre Swift's camp. And I hope he likes it here in Philly. I hope he wants to stay. If that's the case, I'm sure they can figure out to get something done. To be honest, like, he's more talented than Miles Sanders, and they weren't willing to pay Miles Sanders what he was worth. So that doesn't bode well for them giving him a long-term heap of money. But if you kind of look at the history with running backs, like, you look at Jay Ajayi, you look at LeGarrette Blount, like, he's not gonna, throw him a bunch of cash. So I hope that, John Swift wants to be here and kind of realizes that the running back market is what it is. But to be honest, personally, I hope running backs start getting paid what they deserve, man, because it's ridiculous. And I don't think that's going to happen in Philly. So what I hope in the back of my head is that DeAndre Swift goes somewhere and gets paid like he should, and that the RB market is reset. But I just don't think that's going to happen in Philly.
Isn't that such a crazy thought? And I'm sorry to just butt in. You can't run an offense without a running back.
Right.
At the end of the day, like, I mean, Chip Kelly, to my opinion, tried doing it where every down was a passing attempt with Sam Bradford. You can't run an offense without a running back. There's so much tied to the running back position that these guys do have the value that the league doesn't want to acknowledge. It's such a crazy thought to me.
Baltimore is a great example.
Right.
Just saying.
And that's the thing. You don't want to become, Baltimore, where you're reliant on, trying to either you're pretty much running your whole running back group into the ground. It almost seems like every year, and then B, we've already seen that. Okay, like, Hurts is a superstar in this league, but through 3 weeks of this season, if you don't have a running back to take the weight off of him like you did within the last 2 weeks, because he did, like Swift, that's what happened over the last 2 weeks. Do you feel comfortable about Jalen Hurts, going on the Eagles team being 3-0 if you don't have Swift? Additionally, part two to that question: how comfortable do you think? How do you feel about the running back room if Swift isn't there? Because then you're saying, well, Gainwell is pretty much my go-to guy, and we have already talked about, like, how Gainwell can carry the ball for about maybe 15 to 20 times, but what's the yardage going to look like? That's still, like, untested waters, even though Gainwell and Scott are the longest tenured in the running back room in Philadelphia. I think while he doesn't get a big bag, because, again, like Philadelphia, you look at their track history, they just don't give the kind of money to running backs like they probably deserve. I would also say by the trade deadline this season, I would expect to hear a little bit of noise if Swift keeps us up about extending him maybe a season or two. It just, to me, you have to ask yourself those two questions, and then I think also it correlates strongly with, well, Swift has been playing his ass off. Swift has been, taking a lot of the heat off the quarterback, because then you got to watch out for a guy that's running for 160 yards almost. You got to prepare not only for Swift, but now it's going to open the field for other running backs, because they're going to, other defenses are saying Swift out in the backfield, maybe it's a pass play. Nope, it's just, there's just another guy gashing for a run where Swift might have, if he was in the game. Like, Swift opens up the offense in a lot of ways where he's not just a running back, he's actually becoming a superstar a lot quicker than we expected in Philadelphia, because this offense, he fits.
I think like, it might be I don't think I'm saying anything revolutionary, but I think if we get to see more of Rashad Penny, I think there's actually quite a likelihood that they give him like a 1-year contract or something like that. They keep him in house, right? Just so you have that baseline, you have 2 running backs, and then they go get someone else. Like, I don't think, regardless of what happens with Swift, I don't see this running back room next year being Gainwell and whoever else. Like, they're gonna bring someone in, and so, like, I could see, hey, listen, like, Rashad Penny, does he get 10 carries a game, at some point this season, hopefully. If he does, then, tossing him a 1-year contract for, whatever the market value is, 4 or 5 million. not 1,000. Goddamn, that would be a steal. But 4 or 5
Yeah,
million. You know,
they're trying to not pay backs. You never
yeah,
know.
exactly.
It's facts. We're talking facts.
Fuck, maybe you can just get him some, some coupons or something. I don't know, but
Yeah.
but I think that's like maybe more realistic. Like I just feel like DeAndre Swift is just too good not to get paid.
So I don't want to be the gloom and doom kind of person, and I don't want this to sound as if I'm taking a negative approach to running backs across the league either. But two major things working against running backs league wide is the talent at running back throughout the league, and on top of that, the teams who have figured out building through the trenches, specifically on the offensive side. So we've talked about how many years have we talked about how anyone can run behind this line. Now that doesn't mean everyone can be DeAndre Swift behind this line. That's a completely different story. But the unfortunate message that is being portrayed to a lot of backs around the league is that you are replaceable. The Eagles went out and got DeAndre Swift for a 4th-round pick. Zach Moss was acquired by trading away just another running back, and they got a 6th-round conditional pick. He was it wasn't a blockbuster deal that brought Zach Moss to the Colts, and now he's one of the top rushers in the league by a per game average. And
Didn't Zach
again,
Moss
Swift is
have a
number 2 in
fractured
the
arm?
league. He did to start the season, yes, but
Okay.
when they acquired him, that wasn't the case. So there are always ways to get backs. We're Devin Kane just blew up for the Miami Dolphins, and he was, what was he, a 4th, 5th-round pick, I believe. And so you're talking about these young backs who can explode on the scene as well, and they're not necessarily top end picks. So with all of these different ways to get talented backs and behind, now Brian, you did mention that the line will be changing, but even still, this very talented Eagles offensive line, I just don't know that there's a world where the Eagles have a desire to compete. Kind of like what Morgan was saying, have a desire to compete with any of these other teams that are going to go after Swift. And I do think that Rashad Penny is going to be a shocking, maybe not even extension candidate, but candidate to return next season, simply based on the fact that I think he will be more so in the price range that the Eagles are looking for. So if your combination is Gainwell and Penny and a draft pick, or even if Gainwell finds his way out of Philadelphia, you're talking about Penny, possibly Boston Scott, and a draft pick, or whomever. And then it doesn't even have to be a draft pick. I mean, there's guys that you can sign for relatively cheap. Obviously, that was the situation that brought Penny to Philadelphia in the first place, but there's just too many options at a significantly cheaper price point for Philadelphia to really pursue anything with Swift. I hate to say, but I just believe that's the case. That's money that can go towards keeping a lot of these players in-house. That's money that can go towards possibly adding a player to the secondary, or not that the Eagles have shown a desire to do this, but build up the linebacking core next season, possibly in free agency, or even really adding to that offensive line. Because if you do have, let's say, because this is a real concern every year now, that either Lane Johnson or Jason Kelsey were to retire. Obviously, you have Juergens, who is the expected replacement for Kelsey. At that point now, you have a hole at right guard. And then Steen's the guy who you're looking at to play that right guard position, but what if he's not ready? So you're still talking about possibly replacing an offensive lineman, a starting offensive lineman. And if Johnson's gone, are they really confident in the current tackle situation with Driscoll that they're going to start him? Because he's looking like a guard. He's not looking like a tackle. Are you really confident with Driscoll going forward that you're just not going to add a player? And maybe you can do that through the draft. Maybe the lottery balls don't fall that way, as it were. Maybe you don't find yourself in a position to add a starting capable tackle in the early rounds of the draft. So at that point, you're looking at free agency. So with all of these different potential needs that the Eagles will have, I just can't see them committing that money to a running back.
Here's an idea. If they're not going to commit the money to Swift to sign an extension, right? And this is his only year in Philly, correct? Like, it just has 1 year. Zach, you brought up a kind of an interesting point, which is probably going to be shot down quickly because what do I know about fucking trades? But at the same time, um, do you think that if the Eagles still have Swift on the roster, that they'll just trade with a different team to jump up higher in the draft to kind of select their next, uh, probably like their next center, like or whatever on the offensive line, because that's a
So
huge thing.
are
That's a
you
risk. That's a
saying
risky
if they
move.
It is a
are you
risky
saying
move,
if
but if you're not going to sign
Yeah, but then you're
him,
setting
then what are
yourself
we
back.
doing?
You're setting yourself back
NBA style
offensively.
sign and trade kind
Yeah.
of deal.
Oh, you're
So
talking
wait,
about
are
you're
you
talking about after the
are you
season, or
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
was
I'm
gonna
talking about like
say.
after
Yeah.
this. I was talking about
oh,
like after
okay,
the
yeah,
season. Like if you don't intend on having Swift, then why not just trade him to move up higher in the draft to take your next future, Kelsey or whatever?
You
I
have
don't
to
think you
sign.
can, right? Yeah, you have to sign them in order to
You'd
make,
have
take
to
that, make
sign
that
him
Does
happen.
it,
first.
does it have to be a sign? Okay, never mind. I didn't
Yeah.
know.
And then
See, that's how
on
much I
top of
know.
that,
That's how much I know
I,
about trades. That's why I was just
I would
like,
even
it's probably
argue
get
that
shot down.
a running back's value in the trade market probably wouldn't be enough to jump a significant amount of spots that high in the
Yeah.
draft, especially if you're talking about a situation in Swift where you're going to have to pay him a lot of money as well. So, I do think trading up is something they will potentially look at. We're going to be taking a closer look at potential draft candidates as the year goes on, obviously. So we may find ourselves in a situation where there's an identifiable offensive lineman, should they choose to go that way, which I think, based on their draft history and their potential needs this offseason, I'm thinking offensive line is probably the target that they're going to be looking at in the first round,
That's
just
how I feel
this
too.
early in the year. So it's definitely a possibility, but I don't think it's going to be Swift. Maybe they look to trade one of their extra picks this season to move up to select one of those guys, but it's not going to be Swift, unfortunately.
All right, so let's go like this. We do have about 10 minutes left on the show. I guess predictions for tomorrow, and then what is your make or break matchup that will either help the Eagles win or determine the Eagles' loss?
So I'm taking the Eagles by 2
You,
possessions.
you're not allowed to. You have to always bet against the Eagles. That's the rule of thumb on Flipping the Birds
Okay.
with you.
I'm taking the Commanders to lose by 2 possessions. That's what I'll say. No, yeah, I thought about this in my head. 34-13. Philadelphia Eagles over the Commanders. I think if we're talking the matchup, it's either going to be, it has to be either Bradbury or Slay on McLaurin, right? Like that's the one that I'm looking at. It's probably going to be Slay. McLaurin is probably going to be Bradbury on. Ooh, is that like Dotson? I think who's the number 2 receiver? Is it Dotson?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's probably how more so end up. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, when I look at this defense, I think a lot of it does kind of begin with Slay and how he is one-on-one with the other team's best receiver. So Slay, McLaurin. I also think that Howell's going to take a lot of shots downfield because he's going to be relying on the make or break plays, like the big plays like that, chunk yardage. I think he'll probably get a few of those, maybe going across the middle of the field with the linebackers there, but Blankenship kind of really shut me up about that because he protected the middle of the field against Baker Mayfield and the Bucks. I'm starting to think that the Eagles' defense is coming on a lot quicker than I originally projected, but that's the matchup that I look for. Slay on McLaurin, Eagles 34-13 over the Commanders, or 31-13 if Ducks told me I said that.
Well,
Shout out to Duck.
31-13 was my initial go, but I'll switch it up a little bit, and I will say that the Eagles go. Let's go 34-12. Funky score.
Did you just add by subtraction?
Listen, I feel as though there's going to be a late touchdown, garbage time touchdown with a missed extra point. I think we're going to get to that funky number 12. And what I think the key matchup's going to be is Hassan Reddick against Andrew Wiley. Reddick is very ready to go this season, and overcome he hasn't been necessarily focused on any lack of performance. I don't think he views it that way, but he is very hungry to get his. That's just knowing Hassan Reddick. And obviously, you're looking at the matchup on the outside of the offensive line for the Commanders, and who finds himself there. There'd be one Andrew Wiley, formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs, who some still believe outplayed Hassan Reddick in the Super Bowl. Whether or not you say it's that, whether or not you say it was the conditions, which
the flooded field.
Listen, you can say what you want about how both teams are playing on that field. The fact of the matter is, when you look at Hassan Reddick and the type of player he is, how he approaches the game, how he succeeds in the game, not getting traction effectively eliminates him, and that was what happened. You can say it was an excuse, and I think it's more just stating a fact. It's not why the Eagles lost the Super Bowl, but it's why he wasn't productive that game, because he was not able to be productive because of the conditions. And you can say that's a player flaw. I'll give you that. You can absolutely say that that's a flaw in Reddick's game, but I think that he is going to use that as a little bit of extra motivation. Nick Sirianni this week did mention that they try not to use certain things as bulletin board material. They were talking about playing the Bucs when he said that, but when you talk about Reddick, it's hard to imagine that he won't have an interest in showing up widely.
Yeah. I'm just I'm processing, because I had made a point earlier that I don't see this coaching staff letting them get blown out again, and that's kind of half of my brain, and then the other half thinks the Eagles are going to put up 40. I realistically think if the Eagles start clicking, they could put up 40. The Bills' offense, don't get me wrong, is good, but I just feel like this Eagles' offense is better. And I mean, you go Bills, Eagles 2 weeks in a row, they might be exhausted. So I'm kind of split down the middle. For the sake of kind of sticking with my guns, I guess I'm going to go. We'll go 42-21 for the Eagles.
Madden style.
Yeah, he's taking the over, dude.
Yeah, the reason being is I think this defense scores a couple touchdowns. I think that's going to be the difference. I think the Eagles put up, the offense is able to drive the field. There's going to be a forced fumble, recovery, something like that. There's going to be a lot of field position. The other thing, too, is this Eagles special teams has been fantastic. And you just can't afford a team, that's already so talented, good field position all the time. I think this is kind of a perfect opportunity for a get-right game for the Eagles. That being said, again, this is a well-coached team. They will figure it out eventually. I think that Washington's no slouch. They're 2-1 for a reason. But, those wins coming against the Broncos and the Cardinals, I don't know that that's, a fair test. I think, the major matchup, just one quick point. I do think that teams are going to start targeting Josh Jobe. He played well, but on paper, that's the guy you target. So I think that they'll move people around to try and get favorable matchups. They'll try and get McLaurin on him. Dotson's also talented. They have Curtis Samuel as well. So I think they'll move people around to try and get people on Josh Jobe. However, I think the main matchup that's going to determine this is the Eagles offensive line against the Washington defensive line and vice versa. I just feel like the Eagles are going to be dominant, both offensively and defensively in the trenches. And kind of like Zach said, it might be Hassan Reddick, it might be, Jalen Carter, it might be whoever it is. If the Eagles can be as dominant as we think in the trenches, this is gonna be no contest.
Okay. All right. I think I'm going to take a little bit of a different route than you guys. So Emmanuel Forbes,
300-0 for the Cardinals.
Imagine Emmanuel Forbes was drafted, right? And he was asked who he wants to line up against the most. He said Devontae Smith, because Devontae Smith put up 203 yards on Emmanuel Forbes, even though Forbes remembers it differently, saying that Devontae Smith put up 250 yards, which is a little bit more traumatizing, I believe. But I think it's a Devontae Smith game, right? We haven't seen him put a real well put together game as of yet in terms of receptions and yards altogether. I think the Eagles open it up with Devontae Smith, and I think they do run up the score a bit. I think they finish with 31-24 Eagles. The only reason I say 24 is because garbage time touchdowns, which has been the theme for a lot of these teams going up against the Eagles this year. But I think the Eagles' defensive line shows out. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, I think they're on a road to prove something, right? That this duo is going to be dominant in Philly for years to come. Hassan Reddick has the cast off. He's gonna feel a different kind of energy on Sunday, and I just feel like they're putting something special together on the defensive line that is opening it up for the secondary. So I think we're gonna see a really good defensive matchup for the Eagles. But Devontae Smith, I think he has some work to do against Manuel Forbes.
So
I know what you want to bring up. Eric. Go ahead.
So we all got the birds. Let me tell you something real quick. You guys, I don't know who was here from the episode where we were talking about the Devontae Smith, DeAndre Swift trade in our fantasy league, but dude, Brian, do you want to tell the people the trade that I woke up to this? I didn't even wake up to. I finished editing the Flyers article, and before I went to bed, I was like, "This is trash," and I just went to bed.
Oh, Eric,
So-
it's before Brian even gets into that, I will tell you it's worse than you even know. I have some insider information, but I'll wait till Brian.
It went to Tim, by the way. He's never going to start any of them.
I'll wait till Brian explains the basics.
He got picks to rebuild, and he got top players, and Tim is just going to be at his job serving drinks while these picks.
No,
will
Tim's
probably
headed to
end
the
up.
mountains, dude. Tim's all done with that. He's packed up. He's headed to the mountains. He's hibernating for the winter.
He's going back to the Poconos. Okay, so he'll be back in the Poconos hibernating. Even better, he won't even be awake for it. and then the 2 picks that he got, he'll just draft a defense and a punter next year. Like, what is this?
All right.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I made a desperate
By the way,
move.
let me before he does say this, let me just say I offered him because at the time he came up to me, he said, I need a running back, and I do need in hindsight now, I'm happy I didn't trade you this because my running backs are just not doing it for me. So I'm thinking to myself, like, at the time, he wanted to give me Smith, or no, I'm sorry, he wanted Swift for me, and I'm like, I need a top guy, I need a premium guy, I need Smith, and I asked for like, I think it was a 2025 fourth or a 2024 third round pick.
No, you didn't. You asked for a second round pick. We went over this.
It was one of those. It was one of those picks, and I think if you go
That's
back,
a second round pick you asked for.
It might have been 2 first. I don't know. Who knows what it really was? Doesn't matter.
I know for a fact that it wasn't 2 picks at the same time, even though Brian thought that on the podcast because he didn't read correctly. Now, go back and find the. I want you to go back and find the thing.
No. So listen, I'm on 15% battery on my iPad right now, and I don't have a charger nearby. So we're gonna go through this very briefly. I made him a desperate move, yes, right?
Balls.
But I traded Devontae Smith, a second round pick, and a 5th round pick alongside Dalvin Cook for Tyreek Hill,
which is fine.
Devin Akane, that's how you say the last name? Devin.
You don't even know how to
hold
say
on,
the guy's name.
Why are we talking about Dalvin Cook? He's not Dalvin Cook. He's Dalvin Cook now. He's not.
No,
Dalvin Cook.
That's what I meant when I said Dalvin Cook. Like Dalvin Cook, guys. Like that's he was gonna get cut. He was gonna get cut. I traded Dalvin Cook, who's gonna get cut, for Devin Akane, Tyreek Hill, and a fifth round pick. So ideally, the 6th and the 5th, they wave each other off. So I did give up a second round pick, but to
something about they wave each other off just doesn't sound right.
The only time that Arcane is going to pay off for you is if the Dolphins beat every team by 70. Every team, not just the bad Broncos.
Is he not an improvement over Dalvin Cook?
I don't know. Mostert's running back there.
Dalvin Cook wasn't doing anything. So now I have a starting running back, which I didn't have previously.
I'm still pretty upset that I dropped him.
I couldn't even tell you what team Dalvin
roster
Cook
management
right now.
on my end.
Or was
well, that's my thing. So I got a running back that's actually playing, right?
Well,
and I got Tyreek Hill, who's lighting up the league. I did give up a second round pick, but to the information that Zach stumbled upon in our chat, it doesn't matter about the second and first because
absolutely does.
No, I'm talking about, listen to me, because of the keepers.
You were negotiating in bad faith.
Listen, Devontae Smith, I was not going to be able to keep. Apparently, I did not know that. Tim told me that he wanted a keeper. I gave him a keeper, and nobody could keep either of these players.
What? Wait, hold up. What keeper did you give Tim again?
This is what I'm talking about.
Devontae Smith at the time.
Brian makes
At the time, and
legendarily
so
bad
what
trade
did
offers.
we find out that
Or
who did we find out that we cannot keep?
Devontae Smith.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But I did not know that until you brought that information to light.
Because I immediately hit Tim up, and because he was trying to get me to outbid you, and I'm like, I'm not. Brian's crazy. I'm not outbidding him for that. And so then I'm like, oh, but I'll give you a pretty penny for Devontae Smith. He's like, oh, I'm thinking about keeping him. I'm like, you can't keep him.
Well, now, so then we found that out, and then Tim's trying to sell Devontae Smith.
Post trade. You found that out post trade.
Yes. So yeah, that's my morning.
That's how the
All I'm
baseball
saying,
league went.
all I'm
too,
saying
by the
is
way.
that
It
this
was
kind of
just
stuff
dog
didn't
shit
happen when
trades.
I was
It was just
commissioner.
3-point
That's all
timeout.
I'm saying.
Did you hear what he just said, Eric?
Yeah, oh, I know. I heard what he just said. Did you hear what I just said? I'm like, this is how the baseball league went.
There's no confusion
No, dude, no.
on who we can
right
keep,
here
who
were
we
from
can't
like
keep.
Well, yes, I give you that. I'll give you that. There was no confusion in that regard.
Anybody who want to listen, yeah, you want to know how it went? Ask them.
Yo, the baseball league was so atrocious with trades that
Oh yeah.
that Eric just went off one night on everybody.
I caught a CM Punk shoot promo where I sat Indian Native American style. Sorry guys, and then I
To be
just
fair,
sat there.
he values Freddie Batista and Freddie Freeman on the same level.
Oh my
so
god, dude! Yeah, I still don't get that.
First off, his name is Felix Batista,
Whatever, who cares?
and secondly, I do.
That's his value
Felix
right there.
Batista, the best relief pitcher in baseball, especially when you're like, here's I don't know, trash and a fucking 15th round pick.
Zach, you
This is
said
the segment that Morgan's been waiting for all show. This is
Morgan's not involved in any of this, so I feel bad. He's like an innocent bystander.
Zach would pick somebody up on waivers and then offer him in a trade the same day that he picked them up.
It is not my fault that somebody dropped Salvador Perez.
You didn't offer me
Salvador Perez.
You didn't offer me Salvador Perez, and secondly, I did drop him. Why would I want him? Why? You tell me, Zach. You tell me, Zach. Why, the guy that dropped him, maybe I just give him back to him for his best pitcher. Look, I know I look stupid, but come on.
Zach went, hey Eric, you dropped this, man.
Yeah, but you dropped this.
Where's my finder's fee?
Yeah, and then went.
Hey Eric, do you see this? Hey Eric, do you see this poop dollar that you dropped that you didn't want, that you actually said that you didn't want? Yes, Zach, I do see that. Well, here I'm here to return your poop dollar. I would like, I don't know, your debit card, your credit card, your ID.
Shirt off your back.
Well, it's a shame that it didn't work out for me in the end.
Yeah, I guess it is.
You know, but Brian, should we announce the results of the fantasy?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
I came in 11th.
the results of the fantasy baseball league is listen, when we had the last week's podcast, Zach and I were, Zach was leading by 11-2, I think it was, right? If I'm not mistaken. And it actually ended up being a 8-6 win on behalf of Zach. Gave it all I got. Zach ended up winning, but hey, it is what it is, right?
Commissioner went from 9th to the 1st by shit canning trades all year.
By design.
By design.
Yeah.
As the commissioner of the league,
it all started with Brian trading me Bryce Harper because I bought low on Bryce Harper and then I was able to flip him. I flipped Trey Turner, who I was able to draft in the first round.
Everybody.
That's all about
Brian and Zach.
flipping
How can we do this, Brian and Zach?
I was able to flip a lot of guys for a Juan Soto, for was it Nolan Arenado, Paulie Goldschmidt?
Any trade and you just go accept. That's what you guys do.
And that's how
you mean your peers did that?
You're saying that's how we ended up in the finals?
Yeah, pretty much. You guys do what you're doing.
It works.
Hey,
so
I would like
something right.
Hey, I would like Bryce Harper. Here's I don't know, Andrew Painter.
Well, no. So the Bryce Harper trade was that started off just because I had a guy that he wanted, and he had a guy I wanted. So we were like, okay, let's shake hands. Then I want Francisco Lindor. You get Bryce Harper.
You would want Francisco.
Well, that was the thing.
Why wouldn't I
somehow on Francisco
because
Lindor.
Why wouldn't you? Well, no, you do because you're a Mets fan.
I know. So why wouldn't I?
Because you're gross.
And then he picked up at the last. He picked up in the last month.
He's gross.
But anyways, I don't want Morgan to be left out too much longer, so we could cut the show now.
Yeah, I didn't
so
think
anyway,
you're serious when we were saying we're having a 17-hour podcast. Like shit.
And then there's that yesterday. I'm like, yo, Brian, when do we start today's podcast? 8:30. I'm like,
It's
to
a
9:30.
window. He gave you a window.
Yeah, he gave me 8:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. I'm like, so we're doing a 13-hour show tomorrow. And he's like, I'm just messing with you. I'm like, I don't think you are. I
You
think
can do it. We have the technology. We can do it.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't have the battery life for it right now, but yeah.
So that may be true.
Trust me, dude. I got about another 12 hours of not getting out of bed. This is pretty dope.
That's tomorrow, Eric. Like at that point, that's the next day.
No, well, 12 hours would just be what 9:30, like how we predicted this show to be 9:30 p.m.
Oh, all right.
It'd be
So,
late
yeah.
though that you'd be ready to get to bed. So after a long day,
Yeah.
Eric,
It was
Just stay in
literally
bed.
like
It's almost Eric's
literally-
bedtime, fellas. We gotta wrap this shit up.
dude, I don't know. Like I just woke up to just talk to y'all. I'm gonna go back to bed. I'm done with this. I'm gonna go hibernate like Tim.
Yeah, so we all have the Eagles winning tomorrow. Thank you for jumping on this Saturday morning episode of Flipping the Birds. We'll be back on Tuesday at night. It's just this Tuesday didn't work out for any of us. But yeah, until Tuesday, I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese, Zach Travalella, Morgan Burkett, and we're Flipping the Birds.
Go Birds!
peace.
Yes, sir.